If it please the court, Chris Central for the plaintiff, Lieutenant Thomas Jones, on motion for final summary judgment in the matter of Thomas Jones v. Greenwood Police Department, here for the department and the city of Greenwood, Florida in Jackson County, hereafter city. Case number 21-CA0403 LS on the court's docket at number MLS6000-81. Today's hearing is on plaintiff's motion for final summary judgment. Good morning, Your Honor. The court has been provided plaintiff's initial complaint, defense's responses to the complaint, plaintiff's interrogatories to the defendants, defendant's answers to the interrogatories, plaintiff's witness depositions, witnesses' answers to the depositions, and plaintiff's requests for admission to witnesses with witnesses' answers to the RFAs. In addition to this, counsel's legal brief accompanying the motion for final summary judgment, pursuant to Florida Rule of Civil Procedure 1.150, along with 16 exhibits, inclusive of the above listed items, as numbered and named on the trial exhibit list provided to the court. We will ask the court to grant final summary judgment in this case on matters of law. We will present. There are no disputed genuine material facts in this case. Counsel is aware that the court's standard of review for this motion is de novo, as provided in Landers v. Milton, Florida, 1979, and that the court will review the facts in the light most favorable to the plaintiffs. In keeping with Your Honor's court rules for procedure, I will ask 15 minutes of the court's time to present my argument and 4 minutes for rebuttal. We will present our argument in 5 brief sections today, Your Honor. Thank you. In January 2012, Chief Brian Williams, Chief of Police for the Greenwood Police Department, announced his retirement. Lieutenant Thomas Jones, who had been Williams' second in command for the past 14 years, applied for the position. We will show the court that Lieutenant Jones was extremely well qualified for the position, but was passed over for promotion when the department hired a significantly younger person, Detective Danny Thompson, for the position of chief, a person with no administrative, supervisory, or internal affairs experience, and few true qualifications specific to the job. First, we will establish that Jones' age influenced the commission in hiring Thompson over Jones as chief of police for the Greenwood Police Department. Jones was 51 years old during the hiring process. The city has a policy in force that law enforcement officers may retire at age 50 when they have performed at least 3 years of service as an officer of any rank. In their own testimony and in the testimony of other eyewitnesses, the commissioners each admitted that plaintiff's age was a factor in their hiring decision in violation of the Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967, hereafter the ADEA. The commissioners openly expressed concerns that Jones would retire at any point in time because he had reached voluntary retirement age established by the municipality in its legal bona fide retirement policies and pension plan. Commissioner Rose discussed with the 2 unsuccessful candidates the fact that the commission was considering Jones' potential retirement in their hiring determination. In his deposition, Commissioner Green stated that they, the commissioners, quote, obviously agreed on leveling Jones' interview scores to reach a consensus, end quote. It is clear from the comments made by the commissioners during the search and hiring process for chief of police that age was a key factor in their final determination to not hire Jones, who could pull the trigger at any time and retire as he was of voluntary retirement age by that time. Commissioner Muster stated in his interrogatory that Thompson's age, quote, ensured he would not retire for at least another 7 years, end quote. During the interview, commissioners asked questions of Jones that included queries about his time in college, his children, and how he envisioned his life after the force. Leading questions designed to reveal Jones's age, to assess whether he was thinking about retiring, or to elicit a response affirming he was thinking about or planning his retirement. These questions are illegal under Florida Statute Section 1120.044, subsection 3, and Florida Statute Section 760.10, subsection 1AB, the State of Florida Civil Rights Act. The Commission established a set of soft skill observation questions in 2010, but has never used them for any high-ranking position prior to the interview in the search for chief. These questions have been approved by counsel for the city as written. In interrogatories and depositions demanding the language used specifically for these soft skill observation questions put to Jones, all members stated that they asked their own questions, not those that are written and approved by the city's Office of Legal Counsel. Chief Williams believed that the commissioners were looking to hire long-term. Based on what I know, quote, about the whole, well, not only the process, but the things that were said after the process, I think that Jones' potential retirement date probably did come into consideration, end quote. Williams testified in his deposition. However, at no point did Jones ever tell the commissioners that he was interested in retiring, that he was looking to retire, seeking retirement information, nor did he give the members any cause to believe that he would not be committed to doing the job for the long run. Jones was uncomfortable with a number of the questions asked during the interview, which focused on his life after the job. Jones was not given a proper interview with the opportunity to present his ideas for improving the department and show his worth and value in the job to the commission. The members steered the interview toward the primary topic they were most concerned about, whether Jones planned to retire anytime soon. When they did not receive the confirmation they were seeking, in fact, when Jones tried to demonstrate that he would be committed to the job, the members colluded to lower or level Jones' score so that he would not beat out the competition. Second, we will examine the 5 elements put forth in the McDonnell-Douglas test to establish plaintiff's prima facie case for age discrimination. Element 1, plaintiff was over the age of 40. It is established that Jones was 51 years old at the time, over the age of 40 required under the ADEA to meet the first element. Element 2, plaintiff was well qualified for the job. Plaintiff was a lieutenant with the Greenwood Police Department for 29 years. He served the department as lieutenant for 14 years, the highest ranking officer in the department under the chief, and worked as second in command to Chief Williams during that time. He served the department as sergeant for 8 years under Chief Williams before promoting to lieutenant. Plaintiff was the only ranked lieutenant in the department during Williams' tenure. He often was called as acting police chief when Williams was out of the office. As second in command, Jones stepped in for Chief Williams often over the past 14 years. Williams trusted Jones and regarded him highly. Plaintiff held an associate's degree in law enforcement. Plaintiff completed all continuing education and training requirements for his ranks. Plaintiff successfully tested for the rank of sergeant on his first try, and subsequently the rank of lieutenant also passed on his first attempt. Plaintiff obtained specialized continuing education and certifications in victims assistance, human trafficking, computer systems, and management. He also has certifications in leadership and is a graduate of Leadership Greenwood class of 2009 through the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce. Jones was a highly respected second in command by Williams and all of the officers under his command. Every member of the commission admits that Jones was an excellent lieutenant. Jones was qualified for the chief of police position and as second in command had in fact been acting chief for 14 years whenever Williams was away. The second element is met. Element 3, plaintiff applied for the job. Jones submitted his complete application for the position of chief of police and was selected among 3 other candidates. Jones was the only internal candidate in the process. The commission has a predetermined hiring process which involves scoring the candidates across 3 categories: service worth 65 points, education worth 20 points, and interview worth 100 total points. The interview is calculated by adding together the scores in 5 subcategories: opening, appearance, presence and bearing, closing, and interview questions. The subcategories are worth 5 points each, and the interview question is worth 80. The service score is measured by weighted years of service, which adds double credit to the score for the rank of sergeant and triple credit calculated for the rank of lieutenant. The education and training score is measured subjectively and considers any additional training, certifications, and continuing education in addition to that required by the state. For the interview section, the commissioners judge each candidate independently based on their own impressions. The interview questions are standardized and approved by the department's Human Resources Unit and the city's Office of Legal Counsel. The commissioners have worked with these interview questions for at least 20 years. Each commissioner may ask follow-up questions as needed. There were 4 finalists for the position who came before the commission for interviews. This was the first time that external candidates had been considered for a position within the department in Williams' tenure. Candidate Dan Thompson had been a detective with the Applewood Police Department for 18 years, serving 5 of those as a detective. Entering into the interview process, Jones was ahead in point count with 74, and Thompson had 43 points. Jones had earned 65, the highest score achievable and the highest among the finalists for his service. He was given 19 out of 20 possible points in total for his education, the lowest among all candidates. Jones was scored exactly alike across the board by each commissioner with a total interview score of 69, earning 50 for the interview and 14 for the attributes. Chief Williams recommended Jones for the chief position upon announcing his retirement. During the search for candidates, Williams remained active in all parts of the process. Williams stated in his testimony that he reiterated his support for Jones and stated plainly that Jones was the right candidate for the job, and that should be reflected accurately in the scores. Jones' final score was 143 out of a total 185. The third element is met. Element 4, plaintiff was not hired. Conversely, Thompson was scored across the board by each commissioner with a total interview score of 100, a perfect score from all 3 commissioners on the panel. Thompson holds a bachelor's degree of criminal law. He also worked with the City of Appleton as an instructor to provide DARE, or drug abuse resistance education, in local schools. Thompson had a point count of 43 prior to the interview. He gained 28 out of 65 points for service. He was awarded 15 out of 20 points, the highest among the candidates for the education and training component. The commission weighted Thompson's 5 years of service as a detective equal to Jones' 14 years as a lieutenant. There is no law enforcement agency in the state of Florida, Your Honor, that equates a detective to a rank above a police officer. None of these agencies equate the rank of detective to sergeant, and certainly not to lieutenant. In fact, Florida law enforcement agencies generally have 4 to 6 ranks between detective and lieutenant. Williams testified after the interviews with the 4 finalists. He was asked to leave the room while the commissioners deliberated. This has never been done before. As regards scoring, Williams testified that commissioners traditionally independently score each candidate. They do not discuss the candidate between themselves before grading on candidate scorecards, as they did with Jones and Thompson. He also testified that he did not recall during his tenure any candidate for any position ever receiving a perfect score from each member of the commission with regard to any hiring or promotion decision within the department. In interrogatories, Commissioner Mustard and Commissioner Rose denied or claimed to not remember changing Jones' interview scores after deliberating together with Commissioner Green once Chief Williams left the proceedings. But neither did they recall Jones' final scores prior to deliberating, which is exactly what they are supposed to do, reach those scores on their own and independently. Thompson also ended the process with a 143 out of 1. Element 5, a significantly younger person who was qualified but not equally qualified as plaintiff was hired for the same position to which plaintiff applied. Detective Danny Thompson, age 38, was offered the job of chief of police over Lieutenant Jones, age 51, despite both scoring a 143 out of 185 possible points in the candidate scoring process. Jones worked in leadership for 22 of his 29-year tenure. Jones had extensive supervisory and administrative experience, and he supplemented his education above and beyond the required training necessary to maintain his shield by seeking out continuing education that would enhance the roles he filled in the department. On the other hand, Detective Thompson, an excellent detective by all accounts, has a 4-year degree in criminal justice, which is a different track than law enforcement educationally. He participated in all required continued ed training programs for his police department and earned the job of detective. He served in this capacity for 5 years before applying for the chief position. In his role of detective, Thompson did not oversee any personnel. He was not a supervisor in any regard. He did not manage any units within his police department. Nor did he perform administrative functions. Thompson worked in the school system, presenting the Applewood Police Department DARE program. The program follows an established model and requires an 8-hour in-service to become credentialed to teach. Overall, Thompson was on the job, working in the field and fighting crime. His experience is hands-on and limited to that role. He is a well-qualified detective, but when compared to Jones, his qualifications fall short. Element 5 is met. Jones has established a prima facie case of age discrimination against the Greenwood Police Department and the city of Greenwood, Florida. Our third point regards the education points score assigned to Jones in the hiring process. The commission counted Jones' 2-year degree in law enforcement toward his education in addition to all continuing education and training. However, approved non-required continuing education and specialized trainings were not counted toward Jones' education training score, as the members termed the education personal growth. His training and testing for both sergeant and lieutenant ranks was also not counted in the education scoring, as the commission considered his rank under the service component, despite the necessary training required to obtain these ranks. Florida Statute Section 49, Florida Statute Section 943.17 provides in-service training. The statutory guidelines and are approved by the FDLE shall be approved advanced training program courses and shall be acknowledged and accepted as such. The commission failed to count all of Jones' education and training in this component of the scoring. Jones had 29 years on the job training, that the commission did not consider at all. Had they, Jones would have had much higher than a score of 9, the very lowest given to any candidate. If the criteria were that the education enhanced one's capacity in his job, Jones would have earned a 20. The commission weighted Thompson's 4-year degree in criminal justice and participation in the DARE program toward his education, in addition to all required continuing education and training. While it was right of the commission to do so, the method for arriving at the score of 15, 6 points higher than Jones, especially when Jones had an additional 11 years experience on the job, must be examined and standardized to prevent this breach of ethics from ever occurring again. As it stands, the commissioners broke Florida law in not accepting Jones' approved continuing education and certifications and applying it to his final education training score. Fourth, Your Honor, in O'Connor versus Consolidated Coin Caterers, the U.S. Supreme Court held that an aggrieved employee need not prove a younger person replaced them, but only show that they are substantially older than their replacement. At the time of the hiring process for Chief of Police, the selected applicant was 38 years old. Jones was 51, significantly older than the selected candidate. Again, the city's retirement policy at the time was that police officers with a minimum of 3 years service were eligible for retirement upon their 50th birthday, with a mandatory retirement under a qualified benefits and pension plan at age 65. In his request for admission, Commissioner Mustard affirmed that the members were aware during the process of searching and hiring for the chief that plaintiff was eligible to retire at any time and may do so. To reiterate the commissioner's exact words, quote, "At any point in time that he chose, he could have pulled the trigger at any time, whereas Thompson's age assured he would not retire for another 7 years at least," end quote. Considering an employment candidate's age is illegal under Florida state law. Making a hiring decision based on age when the rejected party is over the age 40 is illegal under federal law. And deciding to hire a candidate because he is young enough to give the city several more years before he can consider retiring is illegal under common law in the United States. Thompson is significantly younger than Jones by 13 years, which means he will not be eligible for retirement and under the city's bona fide benefits and pension plan for another 12 years. In 12 years, Jones will become 63 and only 2 years away from mandatory retirement under the law. Thompson's eligibility to retire would be entirely voluntary, thus affording the department an additional 15 years service. This alone was the determining factor in the commission's decision to hire Thompson, Your Honor, and to not promote Lieutenant Jones. This is age discrimination by definition. And finally, the United States Court of Appeal. And finally, Your Honor, the United States Court of Appeal for the 11th District, which is binding on Florida courts, found that when evidence is presented that contradicts the defendant employer's proffered reason for termination, in combination with a prima facie case having already been established, when the decision maker, after terminating an employee, says without qualification contradictory statements, such evidence casts doubt on the employer's proffered non-discriminatory reason for the termination to permit a reasonable fact finder to conclude that the proffered reasons were not the true motivation. The court cited Gross v. FBI Financial Services for the but-for legal standard. Employees must prove that age was the but-for cause of the challenged employer's decision. Barbara Krager v. Takata Pharmaceuticals America, 2012, 11th Circuit. Having established a prima facie case of age discrimination against the department and the city, and having established the commissioner's comments describing Jones as an excellent lieutenant, in addition to their comments on Jones' candidate scorecard where they praised Jones' skills as a lieutenant and police officer, in accordance with the 11th Circuit, plaintiff has established that but for his age, he would have been given the promotion to Chief of Police for Greenwood Police Department, which he earned. Based on the foregoing analysis, the plaintiff's motion for final summary judgment should be granted. Your Honor, the applicable statutes, rules, the Florida Supreme Court ruling in O'Connor, and the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals ruling in Krager establish that the department and the city acted improperly and illegally in discriminating against Lieutenant Thomas Jones based on his age. Specifically, the commission acted illegally by denying Jones the position of chief, for which he was well qualified and had been performing in part for 14 years, and by hiring in his place a significantly younger person solely because that person could give the department 12 more years than Jones before becoming eligible for voluntary retirement. The city acted illegally in certifying Thompson's hire and not investigating the employment practice which resulted in the age discrimination against the plaintiff. Neither the department nor the city has raised any valid affirmative defense that would prevent final summary judgment from being entered in favor of the plaintiff. Whereas the department and the city have no affirmative defense and there are no questions of material fact in the instant case, Plaintiff Lieutenant Thomas Jones respectfully requests that this court enter final summary judgment in plaintiff's favor. Thank you, Your Honor.